Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Black Ops Cold War, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is effectively my review of Black Ops Cold War, or at least as much of a review as I can possibly get of the big picture items that were presented in the alpha of the game. I've been fortunate enough to play about 7 or 8 hours of the alpha. I played every map, I used every weapon, attachment, and just about everything in the build. So I think I've got a pretty good perspective on how the game is supposed to play. Of course, a lot will change before release, especially when it comes to weapon fine-tuning, streak tuning, and little balance things, but the overall concept of the game will stay the same, and the way it plays probably won't change that much. I'm going to break the review down today into 3 sections. First is the good, the things I like about the game. Next up is the bad, which are things that obviously aren't good but are manageable or easily fixable. And then finally the ugly, which are things that I just hate and I think could potentially be deal breakers. I do want to say thank you to Activision for letting me get this footage early and give myself a shout out. If you want to support me, you can use creator code Drifter in the store for Warzone, Modern Warfare, or hopefully Black Ops Cold War in the future, though anytime I promote the code it technically makes the video sponsored by Activision, but please do use the code and support me as a creator. So let's start off with number 1 of the good today. I think the sound design is very good. Matter of fact, it's my number 1 because I think it's the best designed aspect of the game, and I can finally hear footsteps again. Black Ops 4 had absolutely awful sound design with missing, confusing footsteps, couldn't tell above or below, couldn't tell the directions, sometimes just never heard anything. This was especially problematic when it carried over to Blackout and people could just rush up onto me without perks and I would never ever hear them. Modern Warfare 2019 has similarly inconsistent sound design, with dead silence being an ability that you toggle on and off that really makes things silent, so sometimes it feels like you're missing footsteps even if you really aren't. And Modern Warfare 2019 probably had very realistic sound design in that the gunshots were absolutely deafening and drowned out absolutely everything else in the game, as they would in real life. You wouldn't hear somebody walking up behind you while you were doing fully automatic machine gun fire, but for the sake of gameplay, it made things very confusing and I had a choice to either blow out my ears or not hear footsteps. Black Ops Cold War has much quieter and albeit less realistic sounding guns. The guns in this game do not pop, they do not crack, they are not as realistic or loud as Modern Warfare 2019, but the balance between the gunshots and the footsteps and the equipment and the players moving and all the other things are much better. Matter of fact, I think the audio is probably in better shape than any COD game that I can remember playing since maybe Black Ops 2 or 3. I can hear enemies sprinting quite well. I can identify what level they're on, above or below. I can tell roughly what direction they're coming in, and roughly how far away they are too. And this is not something that I had to train for, or practice for, or have super fancy headsets for. This is just something that was built into the game to have good footstep audio. Dead silence is back as a perk. It's renamed Ninja, which makes you a lot quieter but not totally silent when you sprint. This as a rusher, this helps me sprint around a little bit more without totally giving myself away. And I can still hear people that have Ninja or the new Dead Silence on, but not until they're pretty close. They don't really give me very much reaction time at all to deal with them, but it's still possible to hear them if they're running close to you, but maybe not running right up to you. And for me, this is a major relief because that means that we have a fully polished and developed audio system, not only for multiplayer, but also for the Warzone and Battle Royale side of this game, because that's incredibly important in Battle Royale, and the last 2 COD Battle Royales have had poor audio in my opinion. Number 2 on my list of good things is that there is very little flinch in gunfights. The flinch reduction perks have always been the most popular ones or considered essential in past Call of Duty games. It would usually start with the pros and competitive players running hardened or anything that would reduce flinch, and then go into public matches where basically everybody was trying to find some way to mitigate their flinch. And also the flinch mechanic always kicked up instead of to the side, which frequently caused bad players to get free headshots. You would shoot somebody first and they would panic fire you, but because their flinch kicks their aim upward, they would hit you in the head and kill you, which was by no means fair. Black Ops Cold War has minimal flinch or almost no flinch that seems to not throw off your aim at all. Like, it shakes your screen around, it warps your camera, but where you're aiming your gun actually doesn't get physically or violently moved very much, if at all. You can actually aim quite well while you're being shot. And in my opinion, this makes the game far more competitive because it's less random headshots, less random jarring, and it's going to reward people that can aim well and not necessarily people that can mitigate random amounts of flinch very well. And I also think it's going to be a little bit less jarring to play, because in some Call of Duty games, when you get shot, it feels like you're being slapped in real life, like the whole screen shakes violently and it can be disorienting. We don't really have that problem in Black Ops Cold War. Number 4 is that weapon balance is in a really good state in Alpha, aside from the AK-74U. Yes, I know the AK-74U is a very strong weapon, but if you just pulled that one out of the picture, everything else is looking pretty good. I actually did a whole video on this topic where I kind of go into detail about it, but the basic weapon balance they have right now is following the trinity of design principles of rate of fire, damage, or recoil control, so that basically you're choosing between types of lethality or types of usability, and all the weapons seem to be on some kind of balancing scale within max and min of those, except for the AK-74U, which is a little broken. But I know that they've already done balancing passes. I know that balancing passes are going to be done long after this video even comes out, and I think that the final game is going to have good weapon balance based on what I've seen so far in the alpha. What I've seen so far in the alpha has a really good start, and I think that with a little bit of polish, it's going to be really nice. Number 5 is that we have actual real stat numbers for the attachments on our weapons for the first time ever, and not just arbitrary bars that go up and down. It'll say plus 12% aim down sights time, but minus 5% sprint out speed, minus 50% muzzle velocity, minus 12% range, but plus 8% recoil control and stay off the radar, and all these other kind of nice things, so that when I'm equipping attachments on the gun, I'm not having to look at the bars slide up and down and kind of guess what those arbitrary things even mean or what they translate to. It just tells me what it's doing, so that not only me, but everybody else is going to be able to make better decisions about their weapon kitting, and I think that's a good thing, even if it kind of puts me out of a job on in-depth. I'm very happy that color has returned to multiplayer, and I know that not all of you are happy with the color, and I'm on board with you on that. It's not as colorful as Black Ops 2, 3, or 4. It's not a standard Treyarch colorful game, but it is far more colorful than Modern Warfare 2019. In Modern Warfare 2019, I had a really hard time seeing enemies that sat in dark corners because of the lighting issues, or enemies wearing certain operators or camos moving around the map because the map was very gray, industrial brown, and stuff like that. I don't have those problems in Black Ops Cold War. I can see enemies far more clearly. There's a lot less dark corner McDougals, a lot more people standing out, and just overall a lot of variety in the maps, a lot of variety in color palettes. It's very pleasing to look at, changes it up a good bit. We didn't really have that in 2019, so I'm all on board for that. It's more realistic than the past Treyarch games, it's more muted than the past Treyarch games, but it's still a big improvement over Modern Warfare. Number 7 on my list of good items is I think the map design is overall quite good, at least for certain modes, and this is another topic we did a whole video on if you want to look it up. But maps seem to be made to play a certain mode super well. You can see this very clearly in the alpha gameplay of hardpoint, control, and combined arms. All of those modes played really, really well on the maps they were available on. The spawns were right, the vehicles were right, the control points were right, everything about the timing, the rotations, the flow, the flanks, it all made sense for those modes. The maps have basic lanes. I can't say they're all like truly 3-lane maps, but they have pretty basic lanes and a few more flank routes than normal for Treyarch, but they're still a lot less chaotic and cluttery than Modern Warfare 2019. Overall, I think that the maps do have a really good flow, a really good balance, and not too many random dark corners, so I think we're looking pretty good on that. Though I do have to add a little asterisk, a little caveat here, is that some modes just really shouldn't be played on some maps. Some of these modes I can tell are kind of smushed onto a map after they've been designed for something else, and that can get kind of miserable, so I'm hoping the final game doesn't have too much of that kind of thing going on. On the topic of modes, I think that Combined Arms is a very good alternative to Ground War. It hits a sweet spot between large-scale combat and true chaos. So I think a lot of people, I loved Ground War in Modern Warfare 2019. I think it's super fun. I'd maybe battlefieldy, but I enjoyed it tremendously. Not everybody did. Some people really didn't like the Ground War in Modern Warfare 2019. It was too big, it was too chaotic, too random. Well, we like big scale things, we like the idea of massive combat, but sometimes when you get it, it doesn't pan out. Combined Arms hits a sweet spot between those two. It really feels large in scale and epic in battle, but a lot less chaotic than Ground War, and more importantly, you feel like you really do influence the map and the flow of the game and how it plays, whereas in Ground War you could play your heart out and not really make that big of an impact on anything. It's easier for them to balance the map, balance the spawns, balance the vehicles, and do a lot of things for it. So I think Combined Arms is going to be a surprisingly good game mode, even though I know Modern Warfare fans aren't happy that they're going to be playing in like a quarter the size of the map. Number 9 is that Treyarch seems to be adopting an ease of access model for the game and microtransactions that are following in the footsteps of Modern Warfare 2019's excellent and consumer-friendly model. We have crossplay, cross progression, so whatever account or system you log into, you have all your same stuff. We even have cross generation, where you can upgrade your game across generations without losing anything or having to rebuy it, and cross gen, cross play. Everything's getting crossed up here. You can play the game with anybody, anytime, anywhere, and I think that's excellent. There are free-to-play elements coming with Warzone, which I assume will continue to be free-to-play. There's no season pass. All of the content, the DLC, the maps, the modes, that kind of stuff is going to be free to players, except of course for your cosmetic microtransactions, which by all appearances are probably going to be direct buys like Modern Warfare 2019. That hasn't been confirmed yet, and we're actually going to talk about this again a little bit in the ugly section of the video, but it does appear to be on a path of copying Modern Warfare 2019's model, which is just excellent. My 10th and final entry in the good section is that I like the movement mechanics so far. I like the knee sliding. I don't mind the jump shotting. I don't mind the lack of advanced movement. I think that the water, how it's integrated in most of the maps, plays really well. I always just enjoyed swimming around in the Treyarch games. The zip lines are a godsend. They're a massive improvement over the Black Ops 1 zip lines. They're an improvement over the Modern Warfare zip lines. And they're almost as good and crazy as the Apex zip lines. But Apex is a little bit nutty. I'm not sure if that would really make sense if we had Apex zip lines. But overall, between the zip lines, the water, the climbing, and the flank routes, I think it's going to take some learning and a little bit of getting used to. But I think that players are really going to appreciate these movement mechanics a couple of months after the game comes out, when they've really got a feel for them. I think it's going to be really good looking back. And that's all the good though. Now it's time to move into the section of bad things. Now the bad things aren't things that are horrific world-ending deal breakers. They're definitely bad, but these are things that are fixable before launch. These are things that are improvable, and these are things that I can ultimately live with. Number 1 is that the Scorestreak system overhaul is supposed to make the game good for pros and noobs. There's been a lot of controversy in the community about that, but the idea behind the Scorestreak system overhaul, which again I did an entire video on so I don't have to re-explain it in this one, was to balance kill streaks, score streaks, and support streaks. So they're kind of all in one thing. They're all support streaks in that they don't reset after your death, but they're like Infinite Warfare, that the points are stupidly high, but you get a lot of points when you go on a streak of killing people, but you also get points for the objectives. And the system gets confusing. I don't think anybody really has this figured out yet. I know that I don't. And the developers wanted this system so that they could have support streaks and players not feel bad about using them, because some of the people that they tested against supposedly just couldn't get any streaks at all. So they wanted them to have some lower tiered items for bad players so that they could get something and feel like they're really participating in the game, or that the content's not walled off for them. But we as gamers don't like this idea. I don't think anybody in the community likes the idea of just giving free stuff to bad players, and we don't want players just getting free stuff that's going to blow our faces away, like a mobile game. It's you know, mobile games are all on timers, and when your timer's ready, you do the big thing and you're done. Or Overwatch or Titans, you get unlimited Titans in Titanfall. It's kind of the same thing here, in that if the player's not really playing well, then why should we just reward them with all these very lethal things? And the super lethal stuff, chopper gunners and all that, are going to be hard to get, but they are going to get things that are going to impact the match without earning it. And I don't think that's super fun. I don't think that's super good. And the big problem, we're going to talk about this a lot in the ugly section, is at the end of the match, everybody's going to be calling in huge streaks, because all the streaks are support based, so they're like a match point cumulative total. So near the end of the match, people that have been saving these streaks are just going to call them in one after another, and in the last 2 minutes of every match are going to become unplayable. I have no idea how this is going to work at home with randoms. I don't know if they're going to streak as big or as low as the pro players that I was playing against. I don't know how they're going to manage it, or what they're going to do, or what they're going to go for, but it could get very frustrating near the end of almost every game. For number 2, let's talk about weapon attachments. While I think that the weapons themselves are in a good state of balance, I think that the weapon attachments, at least in alpha, are not in a good state of balance at all. As a brief example, we can take a look at the barrels that we had available. You have the cavalry barrel, which is supposed to massively increase damage against vehicles, but really didn't seem to do anything useful in my opinion. The paratrooper barrel is just godly on some machine guns. It doubles their range, which is nutty, basically making them ARs. And then you have the patrol grip, which I don't believe was available in our build, at least not for many weapons, but it allows for drop shotting, whereas the rest of the weapons and the rest of the grips you can't because drop shotting has been nerfed. So now you can equip an attachment to sort of unnerf drop shotting and create inconsistent movement mechanics. Suppressors are all over the board. Some do and don't keep you off the radar. Some change your range, some change your muzzle velocity, some change damage on snipers. You can put red dot sights on snipers, which is pretty busted. I mean, I don't know why you would run iron sights when you can run red dot sight on snipers. This really shouldn't be allowed. I don't know if it's the paratrooper or which barrel. I think the paratrooper barrels also increase fire rate on shotguns, so you get like 12% range and 12% faster rate of fire, which is just, you have to take it. Especially for a spam shotgun like the Spaz, it's the most important thing you could have. And all of this to me seemed very chaotic in that some of these attachments are god tier must have, and others are kind of useless, things that I would probably ignore for most of the game. And I like the gunsmith from 2019, but I don't want Modern Warfare 2019, I should say. But I don't want the aspect of it coming back in that there are a ton of attachments that are useless or that will just never get any use whatsoever. I think if you're going to have an attachment, it should have a use instead of it being just kind of meh at best. Number 3 in my bad section is that heavy vehicles and combined arms can be abused. The tanks were super OP, and I even made a whole video complaining about hating tanks, and I think the community's made a video about it, such to the point where Treyarch put out a statement saying that, like, that's 2 patches ago, they were already weakened and they're not as bad now, and I believe that. But the PT boats were pretty powerful too. I think the PT boats were in a better state of balance because they were easy to kill with C4 and rockets, but they had much longer range and fully auto fire, so you could spawn kill people on the boats really easy. Marksman did this in his videos until I took his boat and kind of got it blown up. Chaos did this in his videos, and I don't mind having vehicles. I actually kind of like the vehicles in a lot of these game modes, but I do mind them spawn killing, or at least hard spawn locking people. The boats need to be a more manageable threat. The tanks need to be something that you can deal with more easily. I just don't want to get blown up by tanks off the spawn all the time in combined arms, which is otherwise a super fun mode. Moving on to number 4 in the section of bad things is that the game doesn't really have any kind of wow moment kind of gameplay or actions right now. And I have mixed feelings on that because this is something that I've complained about in past Call of Duty games, because especially Treyarch, they would give people free specialist abilities and free super weapons and easy streaks, or some kind of streak that was totally broken, but score streaks are supposed to be kind of overpowered in their own way. But every game has this one really, cool, powerful thing you pull out that just like really wows the crowd that's unique. It was like the Juggernaut in Modern Warfare 2019, or the Maniac Juggernaut in COD Ghosts, or the Mothership in Black Ops 3 and fun stuff like that. We don't really have any of that in Black Ops Cold War. Everything is ultimately very balanced, perhaps overbalanced, and it's a little bit sterile. And I know that, if one of the devs hears this and then changes the streaks to be super lethal, I'm just going to want to kill myself. Kind of like, I think they did that in one of like Black Ops 3, they made the attack chopper, or like the AI targeting super strong for a couple of weeks, and it was like really annoying. But all of this is great for balance, to have your streaks and your abilities and all this very counterable, but I think it leaves me and some other players feeling a little bit underwhelmed in that we didn't have that one really cool, iconic thing to play with. Kind of missing that for whatever reason. Number 5 in the bad section is that quickscoping is going to be very strong, like very, very strong. Some of you in the sniping community are going to love that. You're going to adore the sniping, but most of you probably won't. With the right attachments on your weapon, quickscoping is very, very possible and almost at Modern Warfare 2 levels of speed. Snipers in Black Ops Cold War are going to be close quarters combat threats as well as long and medium range threats depending on the skill of the person you're going up against. There are attachments for faster sprint out, for tighter hip fire, which can make quickscoping easier depending on the type of scoping mechanic they use. There's a bunch of faster aim down sights attachments, faster mags, iron sights, red dot on your sniper. Now the red dot on the sniper is probably a glitch. They're probably going to fix that. But a lot of low zoom sights, and it can get really, really strong. And on the note of strong things, in my number 6 in the bad section, is that pistols are weaker than shotgun secondaries. I don't really mind shotgun secondaries. This section isn't complaining about having shotguns as secondaries, or even the fact that shotguns are weaker than they used to be because they're secondaries. They don't want to give you a super strong shotgun like a primary kind of weapon. But the pistols feel a little bit outclassed. Even my 3-round burst pistol didn't feel super strong to me. The M1911 I don't think could really keep up no matter how you kit it, because it's just a very simple pistol. It doesn't have quite the same lethality or rate of fire as the others. And the pistols felt a little bit underwhelming. I'm pretty sure that when the game comes out, I'm going to be running shotgun secondaries only, and I think a lot of other people are too. And that's not necessarily a bad thing gameplay-wise, but it just feels a little bit bad that one category of gun didn't get the love that it deserved. Number 7, and my last item in the section of bad things, is that I don't think that lethal landmines should be included in specialist abilities, because you just get those for free on a timer, just as long as you've stayed in the game long enough. You get a landmine. Everything else in the specialist system is non-lethal. It's informational, it jams, it detects, it shoots down streaks. And I get that the SAM turret is going to be very impactful, right? Like the SAM turret is going to shoot down a bunch of stuff out of the air and help your team, but those mines are just going to tilt people. The landmine is just a free troll device that you can throw down on the ground to screw somebody over whenever. I'm going to get hit by 1,000 of those things when the game comes out for absolutely no reason. For people, it didn't even, like, it's not even like a Betty where you just have a one-time use. It just keeps coming back. Or I guess you could die and throw down another Betty. Man, the only way this is going to be acceptable is if there are no claymores and no bouncing Bettys in the lethal grenade section, and the only way to get mines is through these things. But even still, it's annoying. Call of Duty games just aren't fun when you have mines and claymores everywhere. It's a casual gamer thing. I know it. I was going to say, I don't know why. I do know why. It's because casual gamers love their landmines, and they're trying to find ways to give casual gamers free kills without earning them, which I don't even understand, because that's just grossly unsatisfying for me, but people feel like they need to be participating. I just really hope the landmines don't get annoying. Though, before I go move on to the ugly section, a random shout out. The field mic upgrade is criminally underrated. It's so accurate, it senses almost every movement that players make, so it's almost like having a free radar within a small area. Field mic, I think, is going to be very, very clutch in objective game modes in the future. And now the section you've all been waiting for. The ugly. Well, the number one ugly thing I noticed is one that's aesthetically, graphically, physically ugly and unappealing, which is the animations. The animations, models, and sounds on the gun are all a step down from Modern Warfare 2019. The Reddit hive mind, which I am normally totally against, is absolutely right about this one, in that it's a downgrade from the previous year. Modern Warfare 2019 had an obsession over firearms and realism, like a guns and ammo magazine level NRA card carrying former military guy works at a gun store level obsession about guns. Like, whoever was doing these guns knew everything about them, everything about the way the gun moved, the way the receiver worked, the trigger, the double pull trigger, the hand, like everything that you could think of about these military weapons was modeled accurately, realistically. They sounded very realistic. The way they kicked, the muzzle flashes, even the muzzle velocity and kind of ranges of these weapons was modeled as accurately as possible. And I know this because I've shot a lot of these weapons, and I can tell you that they did an amazing job. On the other hand, Black Ops Cold War uses far simpler, less realistic, and more cartoony versions of the guns. Treyarch has kind of always done this, so that's not anything new or special or like way out of the ordinary, but this year it's very easy to notice after Modern Warfare 2019's amazing job. Like when I go to the gunsmith in Modern Warfare 2019, I feel like I've gone to the gun store and asked the guy to buy a gun that I don't understand very much about, and he just breaks out this amazingly complicated thing and explains it to me like a baby. When I'm playing Black Ops Cold War, I feel more like I'm playing Overwatch or like a MOBA or something, and I'm just sticking on very simple attachments that are generic from every game, and the guns, I don't know. It's just not as good at the end of the day. Man, even the sounds are muted and toned back. They don't sound like real weapons. Now, as I mentioned before, that's great for audio balance. For having audio balance and footsteps where you can hear people, that's great, and I hope it stays that way. But it is something that players are going to notice. The models of the weapons are not as complicated. They don't have as many internal moving parts or as details or the same level of realism. They're just less accurate than the Modern Warfare 19 models. And the animations on them, as Reddit has pointed out over and over and over again, appear to either be reused from older COD games or to be as simple as possible. We don't even have an inspection animations yet. I imagine the animation team is just working furiously to get this done in the last 2 years. And these are things that won't affect the gameplay. It won't like break my ability to play the game, but people are going to notice, even subconsciously, and it's going to make Black Ops Cold War a little bit uglier, a little bit less aesthetically appealing, and there's going to be something that feels a little bit off about it because of the downgrade in weapon quality. Number 2 in the ugly section is that, and this one's a little bit more opinion than fact-based, I'll give you that much. Lag compensation is the Treyarch standard desync again, and it's quite strong. I believe that when the game comes out, you're going to see people boot up their PlayStation 4s and 5 and Xbox whatever series, and they're going to try the classic split screen desync test, and you're going to see like one player jump around a corner and see the other player but be invisible on the second player's screen on LAN or on split screen. I noticed the way it was moving in multiplayer. I think that online you're probably going to get hit by bullets coming around a corner before you see the enemy because it's so incredibly attacker favored. You're definitely going to get a few around the corner shots on yourself. And this is just something that Treyarch has always had. If you've played a Treyarch game, you've experienced this. I think that this can be fixed, it can be improved, it can be tweaked and changed, but it seems unlikely. Fixing this is a pretty major undertaking that the team probably doesn't have much time for. They're already crushed for time making a game this big in 2 years, so I have no idea how they would be able to fix something this massive now in a couple of weeks or maybe a month left before they have to go gold on the game. So when you play, I think that you should just kind of prepare yourself for the classic Treyarch magic bullets. Number 3 in the ugly section is that chopper gunner spawn traps are pretty miserable. I experienced this a lot in the alpha because I was playing with really good players, but as a player on the ground, not in the chopper, you can pretty much instantly die to choppers just holding down right trigger while looking at your spawn. They take a metric ton of rockets and bullets to kill as well, and I don't think you have any spawn protection. You don't have any spawn off the radar. You just pop in and get hosed and die instantly, and they're very hard to deal with. And this is something, it kind of goes back to score streak balance in general. Developers have a tough time balancing between making something lethal enough to be worthy of the top streak. Something that is scary, something that is powerful, something that makes you feel like a god when you're using it and tickles all those endorphins in your brain and that smug sense of satisfaction that this isn't unfair, that I earned this streak. I worked for this one. This is my reward for being so good at this game, is to just murder you because you're not as good as me. But when you go too far, it feels like you're on the receiving end of a malevolent god's punishment and there's nothing you can do about it. And it kind of ends up in old school Call of Duty land where everybody just quits the lobby after 1 or 2 choppers come in because it's just going to loop infinitely. And man, I think there's going to be a lot of streak spawn killing in this game, and I'm not looking forward to that. On that same topic, number 4, they're almost the same one, is that the score streak system, I think, is going to contribute to this problem and make the end of games miserable and the beginning of games fine. Since they're all support streaks in a way that your points don't really reset, I think that what most players are going to do is they're going to naturally progress and earn their bigger streaks near the end of the match. So most of the bigger streaks are all going to come out in the last 2 to 3 minutes of the match. And I mean all at once. Like in the alpha, we had back to back to back to back, like 4 or 5 chopper gunners in a row with other streaks and stuff going on. And it's going to be just the same in regular multiplayer, that people are going to save these up or just barely earn them at the end of the match. And the last couple of minutes of every game is going to be teams playing reverse Uno cards on each other to see who can call in their chopper gunner first and who can call in the air patrol and then who can support the air patrol. And there's going to be this total air battle. By the way, for those of you that don't know, there's a streak that very few people used in the alpha called air patrol. It calls in a bunch of jets and it just demolishes everything in the sky, kind of like an EMP or like flat cannons from World at War. I love this streak. It's very useful, but air patrols will fight each other. So it kind of becomes a game of who calls in their air patrols first, whose air patrol is going to get distracted by various things in the sky, who has people on the ground supporting it with launchers. And I don't think it's going to be varietous or fun in any way. I think it's just going to be this massive bonker streak battle at the end of the game with everybody hiding in buildings. And I don't think that's going to be fun. And I also think it's going to mean that we're not even experiencing the streaks at different times. Like, I'll use Black Ops 2, for example. Everybody loves that game. You could be playing and you could have a really awesome tear in the beginning. You could get a lot of points. You could go on a good streak. You can do your thing. And you can get a pretty good lethal streak in 2 or 3 minutes, and you've earned it, and you can use it early and then have an opportunity to use it again. Or maybe you'll earn nothing again. Maybe you used up all your magic and maybe you suck now. And it's the same with everybody else. You see streaks come and go, and when you see a streak come in, you know that somebody on the other team is doing really well. Well, now that there's support, in a way, you don't really have a good way to judge that or keep track of that, and you don't really know, and it's all going to come in at the end of the match regardless. You're not going to have any big streaks early, you're not going to have any big streaks mid-game. All the cool stuff is going to happen at the end, and it's going to happen in such a slog that instead of being fun and exciting, it's going to be annoying to deal with, and this is my biggest concern with the streak system. Now we got 2 left in the ugly section. Number 5 is that there have been no mentions at all about removing loot boxes. And I know that I mentioned in my good section that it seems like they're going to continue the direct purchase goodness that was Modern Warfare 2019, but that hasn't been confirmed. Supply drops have been in every Call of Duty game for a long time except for Modern Warfare, including 2 of the last 3 Treyarch COD games. And there have been no official announcements about direct purchase only. There's been no announcement about no loot boxes or no supply drops or no gambling or none of that kind of stuff. And the possibility is very much still there for us to get hammered with supply drops, supply drop weapons, and unfair, unconsumer-friendly unlock and monetization paths again. I know that it's a bit early. I know that nothing is official. I know that nothing has been said. I don't even know if it's fair to include something like this in a review, but it troubles me that nobody's said anything, which means that until the game comes out, we don't know what the microtransaction system's really going to be like, and I'm going to be really sad if it's not consumer friendly again. And then my 6th and final ugly thing is another one that is not an official statement or something that is confirmed to be true. There was recently a rumor and leak, which again may not be accurate, but the leaker has been accurate about past things enough for me to be inclined to believe this, that the Black Ops Cold War version of Warzone is just going to be the current version of Warzone reskinned. It's going to have the exact same mechanics, including weapon mounting, which won't be present in Black Ops Cold War, the same zip lines, it's possibly even the same map for all I know, but with Treyarch guns and Treyarch operators. Basically, the rumor indicates that Treyarch is going to get control of Warzone and that they use the Warzone engine and assets that are already in place, and they just add new weapons and new operator skins on top of it. So it's almost like a cosmetic pack. And this is a leak and a rumor that I really hope isn't true, because that would be both boring and lazy. I love Warzone. It's fun. It's great and all. I also enjoyed Blackout quite a bit, but I'm ready for something new. And as a personal opinion, I would rather wait a few months after launch to play Blackout 2 than I would play Warzone version 1.2 at launch. I can wait for something cooler instead of just having Warzone again, and I really, really, really hope that isn't the case, because if it's just Warzone again, I don't know if I'm going to be playing it for a whole nother year. Guys, that is all for this video. That is all of my good, bad, and ugly. This is the most detailed and effective review I could make of the game. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned something useful. I hope that you enjoyed the gameplay. And if you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.